Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Hello, it's Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive. This is episode 14. I'm recording at 4:43 p.m. on Sunday, February 7th. It is a glorious, golden, warm day here in the mountains above Southern California. I'm sorry, people on the East Coast. I know you're getting slammed. We had that a couple weeks ago. Of course, being slammed here looks a little different than being slammed in Philadelphia, I'm just going to say. Welcome back. It's nice to know that you're out there. Please remember that comments are welcomed, and you can reply at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com. That's the blog. Or you can reply at our group on Ravelry, whatever you're more comfortable with. Ravelry repliers, thank you. I found a few replies there. For some reason, Ravelry is no longer sending me notifications when I get email there. So I missed you, but I went over and replied. I really appreciate it. It's whatever you're comfortable with. Please feel free to add yourself to the Cognitive Listeners Map. There is a link in the show notes on Ravelry and at Blogspot. Please be aware that I have a YouTube channel, Dr. Gemma, 2 words, and doctor is spelled out. On that channel, I have flash tips, that is 1 minute or less, for just getting through the quarantine and the pandemic and being locked in together with your family. And I also have some longer discussions of some of the strategies I describe the most often in therapy. If you've ever wondered what therapy is like, you might go listen to some of this, because if you've been afraid of therapy, that's pretty much what it sounds like. It's nothing to be afraid of. But also the good news there is you should realize I'm saying the same thing over and over again to people for a reason, that you're just like everybody else. Most people are having similar problems right now. In the meantime, there will not be a cognitive fiber retreat this year unless I hear from y'all that you want one, and there would have to be a sizable number. I'm not going to organize one for fewer than 50 people. And I'd have to do a lot of footwork on a venue because our old venue is very different these days. But I'd love to have it back in Tehachapi because Tehachapi is beautiful. And I'd love us to all be face-to-face, okay? Even with masks. We have to hope. Thank you, those of you who are trying to follow me on Instagram, and please stop it because you can't. Because I keep a private account because I used to work in a prison, and that's the kind of work that can follow you home. So I really appreciate your kindness in wanting to follow me. Please follow me at the cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com page or on Ravelry, whichever you're more comfortable with. Okay, you can follow both accounts, either one, whatever you like. In the warm thanks department, thank you, Jane L., for a very delicious coffee. I really appreciate it. And I don't pay a lot for this podcast, and I don't take sponsors. Nothing against people who pay a lot and do take sponsors. That's a whole different gig than what I'm doing. But I appreciate that. I'm paying, just so you're clear, I'm paying like $20 a month for Libsyn. So it's not a huge cost, and I am working, and I appreciate the donation, I'm going to be honest. What is on my hooks and needles, you're wondering? Well, yes, I finally finished my Yule 2020 socks. They're in a colorway that's no longer available, so I'm not even going to bother. It's from Post Yarns, sold through Simply Socks Company. And it's a very pretty Christmas stripe, and I really, really enjoyed these. I have to say I enjoyed wearing them too. In the meantime, February is upon us. And 2 things happened to me. One was Fiberwary, the challenge. Somebody else posted this. It's a meme, and it just has something you post about every day in February. And I thought that was really wonderful. So I've been doing that. My favorite so far was there was one day called Made in 2020. And I went back and looked and realized I completed 7 sweaters in 2020, which is mind-blowing because before 2019, I really wasn't knitting sweaters very often, if at all. I think I'd done like one in acrylic years before that and a couple vests. So I really hit the ground running in 2020 and started working on the sweaters. I owe a lot of this to my friend Quandam Quadrat because she came down to visit me in about January of 2020 before it all went crazy. And she showed me 3 easy sweaters she was wearing. And I think I've made one of them. One was the porthole, which I haven't made. One was the Frances Revisited, which I have. I think one was the brick. I'm not sure about that, but she had just a plain pullover. No, it was the brick. I love those sweaters. And I also highly recommend the Agnes, which is a bulky weight, very straightforward, do it in a week type sweater. Long sleeve. And then I also did 2 of the My Boy Lollipop, which also would make a great vest. I'm thinking of going back to that and doctoring the neckline a bit. But the My Boy Lollipop is this insanely great, very short sleeve or sleeveless short sweater that looks great with your spring and summer clothes, I have to say. And then one was a boxy, which I would like to revisit in a heavier yarn than I used. I used a very light worsted, and or a DK. And I'd like to go back and do it in a full-blown worsted. However, I do like the boxy a lot. I'm just not sure I like my boxy as much as I'd like to. And then I had done a vest out of Ann Budd's book, I'm trying to tilt my head sideways. Where have I put it? The Knitter's Handy Book of Patterns, I think it's called. I've totally mislaid it somewhere here in my study. Anyway, Ann Budd 101, her basic patterns book with monster patterns in it. And I'm doing another one of those. And anyway, that's the February challenge. But of course, it's February, so it's also Vestuary. Now, you may remember I'm working on the vest for Twin Face in the lovely coral-colored yarn. That's been mailed off to her, and she hasn't gotten it yet. I talked to her this morning, so we're waiting on that. But of course, I got jealous. And I said, well, it's Vestuary. So I started a vest for myself in Malabrigo Rios that I had on hand in a colorway called Pines that's just insanely beautiful. It's gray-green with no yellow in it, so it's bluish, grayish green. There's no yellowy. The closest it gets, it has these teal moments. But I love, love, love this colorway. It's just gorgeous. As I say this, I'm probably 7.5 inches into it, and I'm knitting it bottom up. And I'm using the instruction from the Knitter's Handy Book of Patterns by Ann Budd, as I said, less coherently a few minutes ago. And I've noticed that when I use the pattern for my size, even though I get gauge, I essentially get a very loose sweater on me. And so I decided to take it up a notch. So normally I knit it on size 8 needles. What I'm doing is I'm acting like I'm knitting at a 5 stitches per inch gauge on a size 8 needle. And I'm using those directions, but I'm actually knitting on a size 7 needle with the ribbing at the waist being on a size 6. And I really, really like what I'm getting. So messing a little with gauge there. In the meantime, let's see what else is going on. Well, you may remember the Rose Ohm shawl. Yeah, well, some interesting things have been occurring with that. I'm almost done. I'm 1 day away from being finished. 1 repeat of the Knitted on Lace. I was so hoping I was going to have it finished today to show you, but then I realized I'm not going to have it blocked. So, I'll include it in the finished section next week. Now, the Rose Ohm has kicked up a bit of dust because I went to the Ravelry site for the shawl, the pattern site. And on the Ravelry site, it says, this is discontinued, is no longer available for download. However, that's not true. Somebody needs to edit that page. Because if you go to the top right-hand corner where it says, like, add to my queue, add to my library, blah, 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 I had it in my library. And so I looked at it and I thought, dang, I wish I could download that pattern. And this is now about 3 weeks ago. And I just ignored the discontinued sign in the text. I just went to my library and there it was, and it said free. So I downloaded it. And everybody and their cousin is writing to me saying, I saw it. It says it's not available. It is. Better than that, Fickle Knitter, the designer herself, Michelle Miller, contacted me because I posted it on Instagram and I said, oh, I'm so happy to be doing this again. What a beautiful pattern. And she wrote back and said, thank you. And somebody else wrote and said, it's not available. And Michelle wrote back and said, it is available. All my patterns are free. I made them free at the beginning of the pandemic. First of all, what an insanely generous thing to do. Thank you so much, Michelle Miller, alias Fickleknitter. Second, that doesn't mean the pages were edited. So if you look on all of her pattern pages at the top right, it will have instructions to add it to your library and sometimes even to download it for free right there. But in the text, they all say they've been discontinued. So if you want a Fickleknitter pattern, for heaven's sake, go get them. They're there and they're free, but you got to go to the top right corner. And it's marvelous. And I was so happy with the because the now has a whole different meaning for me. Originally, it was this insanely beautiful shawl that I paid a huge amount for the kit. At the time, I couldn't afford it. And I'm so glad I did. And then I've been through my ups and downs with it for the last 8 years, which is embarrassing, because I used to be a pretty competent lace knitter. I don't know what happened to me in the intervening years. Actually, I do. It's called 2 concussions. Anyway, so I'm looking at that shawl and saying, either it's a lump of unloved lace that I'm going to throw out and give up on, or I'm going to finish it, block it gently as best I can, make any repairs I need to make, and do the best I can with it. I voted for choice number 2. I said, why throw out what was $60 worth of yarn? I must be crazy. Just push through it and accept it for what it is. The concept of wabi-sabi, just accepting its imperfections. And in fact, celebrating them. I am so glad I did. Now, as I worked my way through it, I found 2 broken places where the yarn actually broke on the live stitch that I was connecting to the knitted on lace edging, and I managed to repair them. I can tell you right now, wabi-sabi, this thing is not going to be perfect. But now that I'm at the end, I'm literally at the last repeat, I looked at it and I said, oh my God, this is beautiful. And I was showing it to a friend who doesn't knit, and she just gasped and said, that is so beautiful. And I said, okay, I'm going to be blocking it very carefully. It is not going to be the masterpiece of lace symmetry that Michelle's lace shawls are. Her lace shawls are so beautiful and so perfect and so symmetrical. Not this one. But I'm so glad I've hung with it, that I'm still working with it, that I'm pushing through with it. I've also got all 3 balls of the yarn. I still don't know why I've had so many problems with this purple yarn. I've been back and forth. Was it mothed? Was it not? But I'm so happy I have stuck with the shawl. And you can get the pattern for free, and it's fantastic. And it took me back to look at Michelle's other patterns, and it did something else. And that is, it made me go back to real knitting mindfulness. And tip of the hat to Gigi Knitmore. I think it was Gigi who mentioned this on one of their episodes recorded around the inauguration. So about, 2 weeks ago now. I really appreciate that Knitmore's mentioned. They're talking about patterns, and Gigi was, I think, talking about a sock pattern from their book and saying, I have to pay attention to this. And Jasmine sort of jumped in with, and all these people, including Dr. Gemma, have been talking about mindfulness and gave me a plug, and I really appreciate that. But it's true that I think a lot of things changed between 2012, when I started that shawl, and now. And one of them is I lost a lot of my habits that had been really helpful and productive. And I think it has a lot to do with working in the job from Hades and the concussions and everything else. And I look back and I think, wow, I want to get this back. And so that's led to some very interesting things for me this week. One of them is I realized that once a day for 14 rows of about 32 stitches each on the shawl, I've been working on a different type of mindfulness. Instead of meditating or running or walking mindfully, I've been doing lace. And of course, the definition of mindfulness is being in this moment. But the definition of meditation is focusing intensely on one thing to the exclusion of everything else. Or, if you're Zen, focusing on nothing. just trying for total emptiness, but that's the hardest version. And that focusing on one thing can be achieved in many more ways than what Westerners think of as meditation. In other words, sure, I can sit down, empty my mind, play tonal music, focus only on the music with a timer. And that's really great, and that works beautifully for me. But I also can walk, and as I walk, I focus on nothing but the sensation of walking. Or I can knit lace. And if I think of anything but the lace, trust me on this one, I have 3 weeks of experience now, I will screw up the lace. So if you want mindfulness and you don't want to do what Westerners think of as meditating, but you want to be focused in this moment, lace is a great trick for that. So I've been jumping all around Michelle Miller's catalog, and I started a new one that I will return to as soon as I finish the Om shawl, and that is the Wild Lettuce shawl. And this happened because I finished my socks, and I said, I must knit socks. I must always knit socks. I must always. I have more socks than I can wear in a week, but I must always knit socks. And I do believe that, because when I kill socks, I kill them all at once. Like I killed 4 inside of a month last year. So it's like, okay, gonna knit all the socks. Well, I went deep stash diving, and I found yarn that I had never entered in my Ravelry queue, which surprises me. I'm usually pretty religious about that. Here's how old it is. It's by the woman who currently calls herself Sterling Ridge, but now she calls herself that. In the good old days, she was Fiber Files. And this is her yarn that I dug out under the name Fiber Files. It's an MCN, Merino Cashmere Nylon sock, a heavy sock. And it's in a colorway called Pacifica. It's insanely beautiful. It's bluish, blackish blue, I guess is what I would call it. It's incredibly, incredibly beautiful. And I looked at that and said, I just can't make socks out of that. So I tried to start the Wild Lettuce shawl, but I realized I couldn't use the right needles as recommended in the pattern because the knit was too tight. So I had 3 false starts, but I liked it so much that I went back, and on start number 4 with a bigger needle, I'm getting something I like. So the pictures are in the show notes. So that was lovely. And remember Fiberuary? Well, one of the prompts, as I was doing all this, one of the prompts was most loved project. And working on Wild Lettuce made me think of all the lace I'd done and think, where did it go? And then I realized it's looking right at me. It's sitting in a drawer, a plastic Tupperware drawer. It's pretty sealed in my study with me. And right away, I looked at it, and there was a beautiful shawl that Gigi Knitmore made for me years ago. And it's in one of my favorite dye colors, which is Squash Blossom from Lisa Souza yarn, which is, the link is in my show notes, lisanit.com. And she beaded it. And at the time, I really loved it, but I wasn't sure about beads in a shawl. And I know that sounds odd, but just roll with it, okay? And I put it away because I also had nothing to wear with it. And I had a yellow shawl in that color I'd made. I can't remember the name. It was probably a Traveling Woman, actually, I'm thinking, but I'm not sure about that, or a hitchhiker. Anyway, Gigi's shawl was infinitely more beautiful than the one I made. And I put it in this drawer and said, waiting for the right dress. And then I just kind of forgot about this drawer. So I went back in the drawer because I wanted to use Gigi's shawl for February 6th for the February challenge as my most loved project. Ironically, it's not my project, but it's still my most loved. But it's been sitting there in a drawer waiting for the right dress. Weirdly, the day I decided to find it, I was wearing the right dress. This beautiful emerald, well, like a light emerald green wool and full-length dress, not the original dress they put out in this pattern, and I can't remember the name of the pattern. It's the one I did the 100-day dress challenge in, for those of you who used to follow me on Instagram. And they put out another version that's longer, that's below the knee, which is much more comfortable for me, just a little below the knee. And I love it. And I got it in green, and the shawl looks wonderful with it. So that was it. So then I'm going in that drawer, and there's all these old shawls in it. So today, for what I'm currently wearing, I'm wearing one of them. And the shawl I'm wearing is the Traveling Woman shawl. And it's another amazing shawl because I made it in 2012. And it is in an amazing set of circumstances, is what I would say. First of all, I bought the fiber at the Cognitive Fiber Retreat probably in 2010, which is a retreat I, of course, organized. And then I bought the yarn from my friend who's no longer dying, Freckleface Fibers. She went off and became a nurse. And I hand spun it into a lace weight, and then I knitted the traveling woman shawl. And the color's called Rosebush. And I pulled this thing out and said, oh my gosh, like this shawl is such an achievement. It's from the retreat I organized and ran in a yarn with this woman who made this colorway as one of the exclusive colorways for the Cognitive Fiber Retreat. It's me hand spinning at a really good level, getting a really fixed, stable lace weight yarn. I believe it's a single ply looking at it. And then it's me, the lace is beautiful. So I'm just sort of stunned at this shawl collection I found in the drawer, and I'm wearing them one by one. I'm also wearing cheap spit socks. The socks I'm wearing, if you look at the picture, are not what I'd call ragingly beautiful. They're in the Serenity Sock Blend, which is a house yarn at Joann's. The reason I like this stuff, it's a bamboo blend and it's cheap. I can make a pair of socks when they have their 40 and 50 and 60% off coupons. I can make a pair of socks for about $4. And sometimes I make up a bunch of these guys, even though they're not the most beautiful colorway, because they're stripy, they're different, they're bamboo, and they're cool enough to wear in warm weather. And since it's 70 degrees out, yeah. Can you believe I have spent all this time in What's in My Hooks and Needles? Thank you for being patient. So let me skip ahead to the strategy. If it makes you feel any better, that was a lot of the blather too. The strategy, I'm going by the acronym ACCEPTS, ACCEPTS. And ACCEPTS is about strategies to self-distract you when you're distressed. So when you're upset, how do you handle it? You use ACCEPTS. And again, remember, these skills will overlap. And that's okay, because that's not what we're going for. What we're going for is we want you to recognize, hey, I use that skill all the time. We want you to bring to the level of consciousness and articulation, here are skills that work for me. And here are skills I actually even use with some success. So today, we're on a big one. This is one of my favorites. And we're on the E. And the E is emotion. And what does that even mean? It means when you are upset, you're usually obsessing about a problem. Okay? That's the wrong focus. Strange but true. And this overlaps with radical acceptance, and you'll hear it as I say it. The reality is, when you have a problem, the problem is outside of you. Name any problem you have. Let me think about what problem do I have. Oh, the boys are away right now, and I want them to come home with my dinner. And these days, I'm always a little nervous about them getting COVID, okay? So there's a problem outside me. The problem is the boys aren't home yet with dinner, and it makes me a little nervous that, there's crazies out there, and they're driving around in COVID land here in Southern California. But that problem is outside of me. It's not my fault. I can't really change it. I didn't really do anything to make it happen. It's just there. Okay? And radical acceptance, this is a problem for me and I just have to manage it. But there's another problem inside me, and that's my own reaction to it at an emotional level. So if I'm sitting around going, oh, I just hate this. Oh, the chances are so high. Sooner or later they're going to get COVID. Okay, that's me failing to manage my internal emotion. And my emotion is pretty much distress, panic, whatever you want to call it. Not really. I'm kind of mellow because we have a lot of safety protocols in place. But hey, it's an example, okay? Roll with me. So I have to manage my internal emotion. The external problem is not changed at all by my internal emotion. So I have this choice. Do I want to manage this problem freaked out, or do I want to manage it calmly? And so the E in accepts is identify the emotion you're having in response to your problem. Don't handle the problem, manage your emotion. Because usually if you calm down, you're going to then be able to manage the external problem better. So if I'm calm, I can do things like reality tests, like, oh, this is fine. They're just going through a drive-through. It's okay. They know how to do this. They've done it for all these weeks since last February. Okay, now you can hear reality testing. They're fine. My husband's a good driver. Everything is good. Okay, so that's called, now that I'm calm, I'm like, why is this even a problem? Well, the reality is it's not. It's a made-up example, but hey, life is good right now. What can I tell you? Okay, but E means Don't manage your problem. Let the problem go for a minute. Instead, look at your own emotion and get that under control. Because once that's under control, you're going to be able to manage most external problems. If you can't manage it, like if it's something really terrible, like, my friend has COVID or something, look, you can be freaked out or you can be calm. Your friend still has COVID. You're going to feel bad. And you face that. That's radical acceptance. I feel badly because my friend has COVID. But I would rather keep my head about me because that means I might be able to do something useful to help them. Okay? So that's what I'm talking about with E. Manage your emotion, not the external problem. Because when you manage your emotion, you're going to do better at doing what you have to do for any external problem. Put a lid on it. Well, Thursday's turned into baking day. And I'm really enjoying this. I've learned now, on Wednesday night, the last thing I do after I finish my patient's notes and charts, do all the emails I need to do, make all the calls I need to make, I go out in the kitchen and I put out all the baking stuff. And that's been motivating me to go to bed early because usually on Wednesday nights I stay up too late because I don't start work usually on Thursday till about 1 p.m. So what's happening? I've set everything else out. It reminds me I'm going to bake. The next morning I'm getting up and baking up a storm. And it's really been nice. It's like Thursdays, because I start late and end late, it's like this little vacation in the middle of my week. It really is. Thursday is my hump day because I work Tuesday through Saturday. So what I found is this has gotten really nice. I've got a bunch of keto cookbooks. My husband bought me 2 baking cookbooks for keto. And I want to, for Christmas, and I want to get into them. And I'm especially looking at pizza crust because my husband keeps bringing home pizza that I can't eat. So I'm thinking about a keto crust. But anyway, it's been really, really nice, put a lid on it, that I've gotten these recipes memorized to the point where I know the ingredients. I don't know all the amounts, but I know the ingredients. So I just set them up on the counter in order. And the third thing I usually make is the tomato coconut soup because that's so mindlessly easy to make. That's not much to say, is it, for put a lid on it? Well, okay, but I'm just enjoying this routine of baking on Monday mornings and baking again on Thursday mornings. Oh, shoot. Just when I was about to give up on it as a segment, I'm back to walking 30 minutes a day, and you'll see it if you follow me in certain places. You'll see me posting the Charity Miles walk. And it's only about a mile. And I'm also posting pictures of my animals and my landscapes and stuff in the mountains with snow. But it's been really nice. And it's really been health changing. My sleep has totally changed overnight. That I realized last week I have to get serious about getting outside. I'm getting kind of crazy. And part of it is because I've got the first vaccination shot, I'm starting to fantasize about, hey, what would it be like with both vaccines? Can I just walk around? Where will I go? And to be honest, I don't think things will change much. But it is weird that I'm having these fantasies. And I thought, all right, girl, you need to go out there. And what I've noticed is my lung capacity is reduced. So I'm not running yet. I'm just walking and getting myself out there and walking. And I feel a whole lot better. But it also made me realize I want to track my sleep. And the Apple Watch is really sucky at that. The Apple Watch, I'll be honest, the best smartwatch I ever had is no longer made because Fitbit bought them out to get rid of them, and that was the Pebble. The Apple Watch, I don't use most of the functions. I mean, I'm sure there are people who love the functions on it, but I'm not one of them. However, I did finally break down and order the cheapest Fitbit, which I think now is about $69, and I don't even remember what it's called. I'll probably stick it into something I really like in a few weeks. But I ordered it because it does one thing the Apple Watch really doesn't do, and that's track your sleep. The Apple Watch, because it turns itself on in the middle of the night, wakes me up. The Fitbit doesn't do that. It has a really soft, continuous glow. And I just realized I don't really like my Apple Watch all that much. So I'm thinking about how do I want to rotate the Apple Watch and the Fitbit, but I really want to monitor my sleep. I also really like to have a watch on in the middle of the night that doesn't wake me up, but if I wake up, I can look at it for the time. So again, the Apple Watch has its advantages. I mean, using Apple Pay through it, just flashing it, at a Starbucks drive-thru and all, that's really great stuff. I don't care that much about it because it came on late in my life. I think if you're younger than me and you're used to doing that, it's probably more meaningful. So I'm getting a Fitbit, and I'm getting the cheap one, and I'm just going to see how I feel about wearing it and tracking my sleep. because I really am working on eat, sleep, exercise, the 3 basics of good health. Under the blather, well, happy Imbolc to those of you who celebrate, and that's Groundhog's Day if you don't. But that's also the 19th anniversary of my passing my licensing exam as a psychologist. You know, that's a very happy thing. There's some very weird stories associated with it that I will not bore you with. But the interesting thing was I passed my exam on Groundhog's Day and I got my license on Valentine's Day. So happy 19 years licensed. In case you're wondering, I became a paraprofessional in 1981. I became a professional in 1996, and I was licensed February 14th, 2002 was the day my license was written. All right. Meanwhile, am I in the blather? I'm in the blather. I skipped something I really like. Something I really like? My Remarkable tablet. And some of you will remember me talking about this before. Now, first things first, this is where all the Apple people go crazy and talk about the Apple Pen. No. They're 2 completely different things. And sadly, Apple has never figured that out. Either that or Apple did a cost analysis and realized that what the Remarkable does, Apple doesn't need to do. I don't know which. But the reality is I have an Apple Pen for my Apple tablets, and it's a total waste of my time. I'm sure it does plenty of beautiful things for people who use the programs associated with it, but that's not what I'm talking about. Okay? So if you like the Apple Pen and you're happy with that, that's good, and please enjoy it in peace, but that's not what we're talking about. And I'll tell you why. The Remarkable, the reason I'm even bringing it up, to be honest, is I'm using it so much on the job, and I've had to change technology a few times in the last year because of power outages and all that. Okay? But there is a genre of tablet out there, and the Remarkable is one, and there's several others. And I just ordered one. I gave in and ordered the Moby Scribe because really curiosity and the price was so low at this point. They had a great sale. Okay, and so I thought, as long as I'm going to review the Moby Scribe, I'll review the Remarkable as well to let people who are interested in this have something to compare. What is the genre that I'm talking about? The first one in it was the Remarkable. They kind of invented it. Some Norwegian guy came up with it, and it went big on Indiegogo and Kickstarter, and I said, who cares? And then one of my supervisees walked into my office when I was in the job from Hades carrying one. And he showed me what it did, and I was totally blown away and said, okay, I do need that. In those days, it was ridiculously expensive. It was like $700. It's not now. But it is bigger and in some ways more functional than its competitors. It depends on what you want. But let me tell you what we're talking about. If you want a notepad computer that you write on that feels like paper and saves everything intuitively to PDF and also accepts PDFs from outside itself, and when those PDFs land on it, you can take notes on them on the Remarkable and save it with your notes on it. That's what we're talking about. So essentially what happened when I got the Remarkable, I was a supervisor and a psychologist, and in my job, I constantly took notes all day. And it was life-changing because my office was filled with paper. And so suddenly, I didn't have paper everywhere. I could scan using the Adobe free app on my phone or on my tablet. I could scan all my stuff. They would scan to PDF, and I could immediately transfer them to the Remarkable and store them. So I got all the paper out of my office and stored on my Remarkable. And that was insanely helpful. And when I was talking to people and taking notes, I could keep them or discard them, and eventually they added a handwriting to text function. So I could handwrite my notes and then save them as text and edit them. And you don't edit on the Remarkable very easily. I would transfer it to one of my computers or my tablets and edit it there. But if you're in a job where you handwrite constantly and you take notes constantly, this thing is remarkable. And the Apple tablets and the iPen don't do that well for the simple reason the surface is too slick. So, if I handwrite occasionally on like the notes function of one of my Apple tablets, sure, but I don't. For one thing, you have to charge the Apple Pen. You don't have to charge the stylus on the Remarkable, and that's a huge difference, to not have to charge it so it's always ready to go. The other thing is the Remarkable holds a charge longer than any iPad or any tablet I know of, because it doesn't take a lot of energy to do what it does. So your Remarkable's charged for like 3 weeks, and that's handy because if you forget to charge it, who cares? And you don't have to charge the pen. But it's the surface that you cannot compare writing on slick glass on a tablet to writing on a surface that's designed to feel like paper and has more friction. It is much harder to write all day long on a glass surface. I've tried it. Like I tried to get an iPen and use my tablets that way and realized this is never going to work for me. If you want to sign documents, okay, someone sends you a document, you need to sign it. And again, when I was a supervisor, I was signing 60 to 70 documents a day. I counted. Well, again, signing on a glass surface, but it didn't save easily. Whereas on the Remarkable, what you do is you get the document, you render it as a PDF, send it to your Remarkable, sign it, send it to wherever you need to send it. And now you've got a copy of your own signed copy stored on the Remarkable. The Remarkable has great storage. I forget what it's got on it. It's got enough. I've been using it now for about 3 years, and I'm only halfway through the storage. So that's the other thing, is I use it as a backup storage for a lot of my records. I have like our family birth certificates scanned and on it. I have our taxes scanned and on it. It's been amazingly helpful. But that signature thing, now I could reproduce that in other ways. You can buy a subscription from Adobe where it will sign in a computer way without you actually using the signature. But you pay them to have a signature function. And that was great. When I was working at the job from Hades, they eventually got that. And that's nice. But if you buy it as an individual, it's much more expensive. And I would have to, because I'm in private practice. So not having to buy that, being able to just hand sign things has been great. But there's more. I was talking about Michelle Miller's patterns. Well, I'm downloading them as PDFs. That on Ravelry, they download as PDFs. So I download them into my Remarkable. And then I can write notes all over every pattern. I can draw lines to show where I stopped. I can put notes next to it. And I can erase the notes, or I can keep as many of the notes as I want, any way I want to. So every time I use a pattern now, I load it to the Remarkable. And I make notes on the Remarkable, and it becomes more valuable every time I do the pattern. And again, I know there are lots of apps that you can use to do your patterns to keep your place. And those are great apps. And every time I've tried to use one, it's just not for me. You can decide. If you're fine with it, you're fine with it. But for me, I find it annoying. And so instead, I'm using the Remarkable. And the Remarkable I can send directly to my printer. I can email the stuff to myself. It has its own cloud. And it has its own app. So I now have Remarkable's app on all my tablets and PC. And I can put things across platform very easily, or I can just plug in the USB cable and transfer things directly to my computer, to my PC, without emailing it. And that's really, really been nice in my current job with some of my paperwork. So again, if you're not in a job where you're continuously scribbling notes and where your world is full of Post-it notes, the Remarkable, not for you. The Apple Pen certainly has its uses. I've seen they have a few apps. I've tried a few of them. They don't do anything for me, but I know people who like to draw, and that's great if you're doing that. Remarkable wanted to be a drawing app, and they pretty much, mostly, not completely, gave that up because that's not their strong place. Their strong place is this ability to take notes all day long and keep them or discard them. So there have since been a few competitors. Sony's got one. I don't see it advertised, but I know it's out there. And then there's a thing called a MobiScribe that somebody in San Jose invented that operates off the Android system. So I've kind of avoided it because the Remarkable is more universal because it's just straight to PDF and has its own cloud. But I'm getting a MobiScribe because it was so cheap because I want to toy with it. It is a smaller size. The Remarkable is about the size of an Apple iPad. And the MobiScribe is more like the size of an iPad mini. Now, by the way, in case you're wondering, I am an Apple loyalist. I've got, as I sit here in this room, there's 2 full-size iPads because I have to have a backup one for seeing patients, and there's an iPad mini. And my favorite tablet ever made is the iPad mini because it's girl-sized. It fits well into a purse. Its keyboard fits my fingers. I really, really like the iPad mini. The iPad full-size, I have the cheapest versions loaded with the most memory because I use those to see patients, and they're incredibly good at that. So, this isn't some blasting of the iPads. They're great, and I'm loyal to them. But they don't do what the Remarkable and the Mobi Scribe and the Sony thing do. And they don't do what the Rocketbook does, which I'll also get around to as well. There's another cheap Rocketbook out there it's black with neon-colored inks. I just saw an ad for it, and they sell it at the stationery stores. So, there's all different variations on this going paper-free writing thing. But for me, the most important thing was the Surface and the universal PDF format. And Remarkable, for my money, is still doing that the best of all of them. Currently, there's the Remarkable 2, and they still sell the Remarkable 1. And I think they're selling them for, I'd have to check, but I think it's like $200 to $300. They've really come down in price, and that's nice. The Mobi Scribe was even cheaper, but it's a smaller Surface. I really like the big Surface on the Remarkable, but hopefully I'll be getting my Mobi Scribe this week, and I'm looking forward to taking it for a test drive because I figure when I want to leave the Remarkable home, and I do, a lot of the family docs are on it, I'll be able to carry around the Mobi Scribe a little more easily in my purse. Will these ever replace an Apple tablet? Don't be ridiculous. Or any tablet, Android included. Tablets have a very different function than this. They're not really for handwriting. They're for a lot of other things. You can do a lot of email, you can do a lot of web stuff, you can browse, blah, blah, blah. You're not going to get that out of a Mobi Scribe or a Remarkable. That is not what they're for. If you're looking for a multi-use tablet, get a multi-use tablet. That's not what I'm talking about. If you're going to say, well, I can use my Apple for most of that, you're probably right. Will it be as comfortable? No. Will it be as convenient? No, because you got to keep charging the pen. But it's not a disaster. I mean, again, I think Apple sort of studied the Remarkable model and said, man, not that important to us. But they tried to take the best of it and use the Apple Pen. And, for my money, they didn't succeed. But that doesn't mean, my tablets have many other uses. And when I'm lying in bed at night, it's usually a tablet I'm messing with. The Remarkable's usually done by the end of the day. So there we go. What else have I got for you? That's most of the blather as well. Let's see. Oh, on the Ravelry page, just so you know, I've been updating the strategies lists and taking them off the sticky notes at the top of the Ravelry group, and instead making them pages in the Ravelry group. So if you want to see the strategies from previous episodes, when you go to the Ravelry group, you go to the tab marked pages, and most of them are there. I'm trying to bring myself up to date so that the only sticky tab of strategies is the most recent 50. But I'm still working on that. It's a lot of work to catch that up. But I've been doing that. And also I've been adding the most recent episodes as show notes on the Ravelry group, so you can see all the show notes there if you're still comfortable using Ravelry. Anything else? Not really. Pretty eventful, huh? And a little bit technical. I hope everybody's okay with this. So thank you so much for listening. As always, I really appreciate it. All I can tell you is I'm waiting for vaccine number 2 at the end of February. And, oh, by the way, I did get a reaction. Everybody asks this. I got what's called COVID arm, where the Moderna vaccine gives a lot of people a rash around the injection site. I got one. Strangely, it took about 10 days to show up. And then it lasted for about another 8 days. And now it seems to be gone. I think it may be related to what fiber I was wearing in my sleeve, would be my guess. That it didn't like synthetic fiber. I'm thinking that, because when I went to natural fibers again, got into a cotton shirt, it went away almost immediately. So food for thought. But anyway, I'm looking forward to the next vaccine. And even so, I'm still going to be using all the safety protocols, because you should. I have a bunch of good posts, memes, that are information from a medical provider on the East Coast. And I got to try to remember to put them up. Maybe I'll put them up next episode. But there we are. And in the meantime, nothing much has changed. Still got to do all the precautions. So please, everybody, thank you so much for listening. Please remember, wear your mask, wash your hands, social distance. But meanwhile, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.